Okay, it's that time again. Titleist have brought out two new drivers, TSi2, TSi3. I've had them in the bag for 2 weeks. I'm going to tell you all about them in this full in-depth review. So here we have them, the new Titleist drivers, TSi2, TSi3. Now you might know Titleist only bring out drivers every 2 years. And these are to replace the TS2 and TS3 drivers. Stay tuned to later in this video. I'm going to show you if these drivers are any better than the previous models. But first, let's talk about what Titleist claim are better with these two new versions. So after diving into the spec of the new TSi drivers, what are Titleist claiming is improved? Well, I've got to be dead honest, it's quite similar to what we're seeing with a lot of drivers. Better aerodynamics with the club head to make you swing it faster. A different face insert to make the ball speed even faster across the face. Now they're reckoning this is a brand new material they've never used in a driver before. It's called ATI 425 and it's an aerospace grade material. Apparently they've used it on the Mars rover and Chinook helicopter blades. It's the real deal, apparently, and they're now bringing it into a new Titleist driver face. We'll come on to that a little bit more in a bit. Also, they've improved adjustability. With the TSi3 especially, they've got a new weight system at the back, which is giving you loads of variation on being able to shape and maneuver the ball flight to a certain degree. I think they undersell it a little bit. They're still using the Sure Fit neck adjustability, which has 16 different options. And also, they've given it a complete different look. Like this driver is a sleek looking driver. The blacked out crown, the very minimalistic design on the bottom. It's a very modern looking Titleist driver and quite a modern looking head cover to match. Now, this story for me and these drivers started 2 weeks ago. I'd been fitted for the drivers, professionally fitted, and then I spent some time getting used to the drivers. And the first place I wanted to go to, just to get a bit of an insight and a first hit with these fitted drivers, I went down to the driving range. So this is where the fun began, to spend some time testing these drivers. And at the driving range, it was just so much fun because I could just let loose and give them a hit, get my initial thoughts for these two new drivers. For me, they are very different looking this year. TSi2 is a big footprint, it's a big sized head, it looks a little bit more kind of front of the face to the back of the club, much bigger, where TSi3, that's a really classic head shape. Very much, for me, a throwback to some of the old head shapes that Titleist have used in the past. Probably favoured the TSi3 personally myself. And on the driving range, just getting a feel, kind of starting to see a little bit of difference in the flight, even from hitting range balls. That's why I wasn't really collecting any data. But for me, the flight, TSi2 was going a little bit higher, TSi3 was a little bit more penetrating. So I'm starting to get to know the drivers. But the restrictions on the driving range is that I could hit it as hard as I wanted to, and also there's range balls. So I wanted to go to the golf course. So there's a similar test out on the golf course, again, yeah, with no data. I didn't want to know the data just yet. That will come very soon. So out on the golf course, I could really start to form an opinion of these drivers. Hitting Pro V1s when there's actually feels like there's a consequence, when you're out in the open. For me, this is where I started to tell the difference with the sound. Oh my goodness. Talk about this year, TSi2 and 3 being totally different is so true. TSi2 was a much higher pitched noise. It gave it a little bit more of a sharp sound. Flight-wise, as I saw similar to the driving range, that was going up in the air, but it seemed easy to hit. Like I was enjoying hitting that, and I felt like on a tough hole, I was hitting that fairly straight. TSi3. Now for me, this is a different animal. It sounded so much better in my opinion. A little bit deader noise. Almost, it felt a little bit more like a carbon crowned head. It felt like it had that little bit more of a dead, meaty sound to it. Ball flight wise, lower, more penetrating. So at this point, I'd hit a lot of golf shots with these drivers. A bucket of ball at the driving range, a good practice session and testing session out on the golf course to really start to get an understanding of these drivers. And at this point, as I mentioned, zero data. What I was really trying to figure out, just from my eye, as you know, I test a lot of drivers over the years, is was I seeing a much difference? Was I seeing the ball flight come off the face faster? Did it feel like it had a bit more energy? Was I convinced? Was I excited about this new ATI face insert? Was it giving me this aerospace, this something new that I'd never seen before? Not yet. So I set up on a different day on the golf course with my GC quad and a bag of Pro V1s, and I gave these drivers a proper data test. I must admit, there's not many things that excite me and please me more than standing with a bucket of Pro V1s, smacking drivers with GC Quad. Before we come on to data, I want to talk about price. These things are coming in at the moment when they first are released at RRP £519. Now, that price might come down as it hits the retail shops, etc., but it's an expensive driver. It's right up there with one of the most expensive out there that you can buy from the main brands. It's kind of got to deliver a little bit. That aerospace face must cost a lot of money. Let's talk about data, and then I'm going to show you the results that I found with TS3 that I tested as well. So let's kick things off with this one, TSi2. Now TSi2, for me, possibly does not suit me fully. It's a driver head shape that's a little bit more, I don't know, forgiving, friendlier looking. Now, when I say doesn't suit me, I just mean from a perspective of distance. And I'll be honest, that showed up on the numbers. For me, when I was hitting TSi2, I averaged 111 club head speed, 158 ball speed, 270 yards of carry, and it was averaging at 2,800 spin. Now, that's not long for me. I'm normally in the 280 yard mark with a driver. So even tuned in that driver, it just didn't feel like it was popping off the face. However, what I was super impressed with was how accurate this driver was. Like, it was forgiving. I hit it unbelievably straight. If I wanted to find a fairway, that's the driver I'd want to put in my bag. Just wasn't, don't know, you know when you hit a driver and it just pops off the face? That just wasn't doing it for me, and that's a real shame. So potentially, if you're looking for a driver for more accuracy, this could be the route for you. It's possibly, in my opinion, maybe aim for a slightly higher handicapper. Not terrible, but didn't impress me massively. So then moving into TSi3. Now, I was really excited about this driver. For me, in all of the testing that I've done so far at the driving range and on the golf course, this is the one that was impressing me. It was giving me the best flight. I grew to love the head shape. I didn't love it at first, but I grew to love the head shape. It's very different to TSi2, much smaller, and almost the toe flares outwards a little bit. Almost looks like it's quite open and looks like it's got quite a lot of loft on it. But as I mentioned, I grew to love that. So I was excited to see the data with TSi3. Data-wise, club head speed was the same, 111 miles per hour. Ball speed jumped up a fraction to 160 miles per hour, and I was getting average carry distance of 277 yards with a spin rate of 2,400. Now, you heard me say I was excited about this driver. Just don't feel like those numbers were that impressive. I've been waiting 2 years to test the new Titleist driver, and it just wasn't popping. Like, there are other drives I've tested that have been longer. It wasn't horrendous, but it certainly wasn't groundbreaking when I tested it. So it got me thinking, well, hold on. If TSi3 is doing that, and I've got TS3 Driver, which again was the one that suited me from previous model, let's put those two head to head. So same day, pulled out the TS3 driver, quite similar settings actually, even though, I got fitted for both, there weren't really much difference. And I saw some slight differences in data. Not loads, but a little bit. TS3 actually swung at 112 miles per hour. The ball speed was 159 miles per hour. The average carry was 275 yards of carry, and the spin rate was the same at 2,400. So all in all, incredibly similar to last year's model. Like almost the same. 2 yards, I mean, it's nothing. So it's kind of got me thinking a little bit, what should we as golfers, and what should I, when I'm testing clubs, look to expect? Yeah, it's been 2 years since the TS drivers. And these are the new versions. Was I expecting 10 yards difference, 20 yards difference? Possibly not. If I'm dead honest, we know we're at somewhat of a limit right now with technology. I don't know, just wanted something a little bit extra. I wanted there to be maybe a different technology story. Obviously there's a different face and you can use all the fancy terminology of it being an ATI 425 aerospace face that's got, on the Mars rover and all this, but what does that actually mean? Did it equate to more ball speed? Not massively, which is a real shame. One thing also to note, and I made a video sat in this very spot, I think it was 2 years ago, last year, about how I was annoyed at Titleist. Because at the time, they brought out TS1 and TS4 drivers, and it almost came as a bit of a curveball. Give you a heads up, this year they are looking to again release TSi1, TSi4. Now they are at the other ends of the spectrum. TSi1 will probably be even more forgiving. I don't know if that's even possible against that this year. And TSi4 will be lower spinning, really aimed at your tour player. That's a little heads up. So my final thoughts, these new TSi drivers. At £519, are they much of a difference to TS drivers? No. If you've got one of those in the bag, keep them in. I doubt you'll see much difference. Where you might see a difference if you've got a 915 driver or a 917 driver. We're talking now 4-6 years old. Yes, you might start to see a bit of a difference in technology. So after testing these drivers for 2 weeks, I've got to say, unlike the material used on the face and on the Mars rover, these drivers are not out of this world. See you next time.